How's everyone feeling? Do we all have our afternoon coffee? Yes. Thank you. Thank you. I like the cheers. Thank you to Brand Innovators for today. What a great event it's been. Thank you to GroupM for hosting, and thank you to Tim for being an awesome moderator for today. Crushing it. I'm Sarah Denby. I am an account executive with Zynga, one of the world's largest mobile gaming companies. We have over 200 million monthly active users globally. And I'm here with Cherie from Colgate-Palmolive, who is the Senior Director of North American Insights.
Hello, so great to be here. Thank you.
Would you like to tell us a little bit more about what your role is?
I can do that. So I head up our North America Insights team for Colgate-Palmolive, and my team oversees everything from the very early stage foresight work, looking very future focused, 5, 10 years out. What will the world be like? How do we ensure our brands and our categories are set up to drive that change and be relevant and successful? To a lot of work around innovation, especially product innovation, with partnering closely with our R&D teams, doing a lot of work around the graphics, the pricing, the formula, a lot of the communications work, and then down to the omnichannel piece once we're actually in market and building out the portfolio and things like that.
Quite a broad role.
Yes.
Icebreaker question.
Yes.
Colgate-Palmolive has a lot of brands under their umbrella. So if you were on a deserted island, which one product would you hope washes up first?
Ooh, that's so tough. It might depend who I'm deserted with, but I think I would say the Hello Concentrated Mouthwash. I don't know if anyone has seen it, but it's a small concentrate, so it's travel friendly. And it's actually quite nice because you can customize 1 pump, 2 pumps, 3 pumps, depending upon how strong you like your mouthwash.
Very cool.
Yes.
That's also very good to know about.
Yes. What would your product be?
I would have gone in more of the body wash soap category, like a soft soap or an Irish Spring. It looks very invigorating.
Indeed.
And so quickly, before we jump into insights and all things Colgate-Palmolive, I found your LinkedIn header to be very interesting, and I'll read it quickly. It says, people-centric innovator, foresight enthusiast, insights leader and mentor, and sustainability advocate. The first two, people-centric innovator and foresight enthusiast, I was especially struck by. Would you explain the meaning behind all of that?
So the people-centric innovator, I think this is something that I've really tried to live into pretty significantly the last several years in terms of thinking about people as whole humans, and not just when they're in shopper mode, not just when they're in consumer mode, kind of pulling off our blinders and being a little bit more self-aware of how people and we all interact as part of the world as humans, not just a person who happens to brush their teeth 2 times a day. So that's really kind of grounding a lot of the work that we do, and we try to understand people holistically, and that includes culture and a lot of other things. And from the foresight perspective, that's just really fun. I mean, we are very fortunate to be in a data-rich market, and obviously that's accelerating quickly. But a lot of that is focused on the here and now and even the recent past, and extraordinarily valuable, right? But I think where it gets really fun and exciting is thinking about how things are going to collide in the future. The collision of demographic changes, technology, environmental, cultural, and that to me is where there's really power in understanding how we can not only anticipate, but also drive the future.
Yeah, and we're going to dig a bit deeper into each of those points, starting with the fact that Colgate has a really long history of innovation in the oral care industry. And how is the company leveraging consumer insights and driving the development of those big ideas to really break through products in what is such a competitive market?
Yeah, it's certainly, I think, a competitive market, and one that's changed pretty dramatically if you think of the rise of challenger brands and direct to consumer, over the last 5, 10 years. But again, going back to my point on being people centric, I think that's really at the heart of getting to the good big idea, getting to the good insight, and kind of acknowledging that people have hopes, dreams, priorities, things keep them up at night, far outside our categories. And what's been very helpful is understanding that at a level that then helps us connect the dots between our categories. So the home care business, the personal care business, oral care, We also have pet care and skin care, skin health. So I think there's a lot there if you think about some of the threads, and understanding people more holistically helps us understand those motivators. And what's really helpful about that is it helps us anticipate trade-offs, especially when you're looking at, economic decisions that people are making and things like that. Understanding the mindset of their perceptions of cleanliness, hygiene, indulgence, whatever it is, can help us, I think, be more holistic in the way that we anticipate those trade-offs and run the business.
Yeah. And I mean, speaking of big ideas being generated from understanding the consumers, would you be able to provide an example of a successful campaign, or perhaps a product launch that's been driven by that?
Absolutely. So I actually have one example of each. The first is a campaign that just launched in the past month for Colgate Equity. And it's really built on the fact that everyone's smile is individual. It's a form of self-expression. And the insight behind that being that, a lot of people feel a little bit concerned or embarrassed about their own personal smile and things that make you yourself, when in actuality, that's really something to lean into. And it's something to be proud of because it's what makes us individuals. So Connor, yes, thank you. Our first video.
That was awesome.
Thank you. I love that one. Thank you. So that was the first example, right? A very obviously deep and human and personal insight that many people can probably relate to. And obviously that drove a very strong marketing campaign. I think on the other end of the spectrum, I also have an example that's much more tangible, tactical in some ways, driving product innovation through the lens of a fragrance extension. So we have the brand Fabuloso in our portfolio. If you're not aware, it's a cleaning brand and heavily sensorial. They lean into the fragrances pretty significantly, and it has kind of a hidden fan following that I think is really interesting to tap into. So the team, was obviously keeping a finger on some of the trends that are happening on TikTok and Clean Talk and Mop Talk and Sponge Talk and all of the other talks that I've learned about in the last couple months. And, seeing a lot of trending about, fragrances such as watermelon. So we just launched a watermelon Fabuloso, and it's been getting like an oddly incredible amount of buzz, and just seeing the hype, right, is really fun. So this is another example of an insight that's driving a product innovation. This is not a Colgate video. This is something we pulled from TikTok, so user generated, but just to give you another sense of the power of the insight behind it.
So this is the Fabuloso, and they have watermelon? Like, where have I been? When did this come in? I want it. She's going with us.
Yeah, she a good girl.
So again, very different, right? Not everything is big and heavy and serious, but I think it just speaks to the power also of being kind of on and understanding what's happening in the world around us.
She a good girl. That was really cute. Yeah, those are great examples on how understanding consumer behavior is so essential for effective marketing. So with that, can you share how Colgate is gathering and interpreting those insights to really identify unmet needs and opportunities?
Yeah, so I think like most organizations, right, we do a lot of qual and quant primary research. Largely is the backbone, right? But I think as you look at the way the industry has evolved so much over the past couple of years, there's been just an acceleration of, 1P data, which obviously we talked a lot about today, as well as social listening, behavioral science, right? A lot of these different elements coming in many cases, further accelerated by AI, but not built solely on that. So I think we've seen that round out. The other piece that I'm really focused on is understanding culture and semiotics. And I think that's incredibly helpful and sometimes overlooked in terms of the way that we understand, people and a very important element for us to get an understanding of the context, the social norms, the environment that we're all living in. And sometimes it's very difficult to articulate that. Why do something, why don't? But I think understanding the world around us can be incredibly helpful. And as you triangulate all of those, right, that's where you start to see some new needs emerging and connect some dots.
Yeah, and it's important to think differently about how to innovate and how to communicate those big ideas as well, where insights can really uncover those opportunities. So can you share a time when one of your brands took an approach like that?
Yes. So I actually have one more example that isn't specifically a campaign, isn't specifically a product innovation, but a really powerful program created by our Toms of Maine brand. If you're not aware, they're the OG of naturals and sustainability in many of our categories. And it's a brand by nature that's very much in tune with a lot of the DE&I conversations and the evolution and kind of the expansion of that space. And doing a lot of work with a lot of communities around the country, they, really unearthed this insight that there were a lot of voices that weren't being heard, especially when it comes from underrepresented communities across the country and people specifically who are doing work around climate justice, environmental good, things like that. And so they created this program called the Incubator Program, and it's intended to find Gen Z entrepreneurs who are doing work in the sustainability and social good space and give them funding and mentorship. So we launched the program last year. We just announced our second cohort, about a month ago, 2024. So very excited to see that come to life and to see a brand like that, like really living and breathing its values. So one more video.
I was excited about this one.
The next generation of environmental leaders, community organizers, and changemakers working to help protect the planet are too often left out of the conversation. To make an impact on the future, we need the voices of everyone. Toms of Maine started with a small $5,000 loan and a big dream to create natural personal care products as part of our mission to do good for people and the planet. Now we're paying it forward by giving back. To date, Toms of Maine has committed over $200,000 to its incubator program, helping underrepresented youth become the next generation of climate movement leaders. We're providing funding, mentorship, and amplification to help early career changemakers do good for real.
So cool. Now, talking about consumer needs and their preferences, they certainly vary by region and by demographic. So how is Colgate tailoring its approach to the consumer insights to account for cultural differences and the regional nuances in its marketing?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think no matter where we are in the world, obviously everything comes back to the business question. So we have to build an approach, based on ultimately what we're trying to learn and more importantly, what we're trying to drive in the business. But I think, one thing that's very helpful as we're crafting that, especially across markets or across countries, is to understand what are those cultural norms, what are some of the logistics, right? The accessibility, a lot of those different pieces. So a couple examples. If you think about in-person, in-home immersions or ethnographies, some markets are really ripe for that, right? The US being one of them. And the fact that you can get in someone's home, they're very generally open and trusting and talk to you and show you around and show you what's behind their cabinets and what's in their fridge and whatever else. And certain markets, it's absolutely not the case, right? So either there's a different gender dynamics, so you would never have people in your home depending upon their gender. There are different, household compositions, things like that, mistrust of strangers. So I think that there's a lot of things to consider in something, some decisions like that. In the online world, obviously, there's a strong concern about privacy in certain markets, and there are a lot of government regulations in other markets. So I think that obviously impacts, surveys, what you can do with social listening. It impacts videos, things like that. But regardless, I guess, of how the plan is tailored or where the learning comes from, it's helpful for us to connect the dots between what is similar across markets, and then where you have to have local nuances, right, as you're crafting the marketing plan. And I have one example from a couple of years back. I was in our global mouthwash business, and largely across the world, some markets have mouthwash, many don't. But of those that do, generally people use it for freshening benefits. Nothing, that crazy dissimilar. But actually, once you start peeling back the onion and you start to see that there are significant cultural norms that drive where or how people are using it, that's where it gets interesting, right? So is it acceptable to use it in your home, in your own bathroom? Probably. Is it acceptable to use it at work, in the bathroom? In some cultures, yes, it's part of their everyday. It's as natural as washing your hands. In other cultures, no. Other people, using it at a restaurant and after your meal in the bathroom. So, things vary pretty significantly, but I think that's actually where the gold is, and really crafting plans that can help you acknowledge and address those.
Great. And flossing at the table is controversial, but we had an interesting discussion about whether that's acceptable or not before. Any takers on yes or no?
Yeah, people's faces are like, absolutely not. I think they're all on our same page. Yeah.
I say no.
Thumbs down.
Moving on to collaboration, it's really crucial when talking about innovation. So how are you and your teams fostering the cross-functional collaboration between marketing, research and development, other departments to really translate what you're learning from consumer insights into really impactful marketing strategies and product innovation?
I think collaboration is something, stating the obvious, right? It's really important. It's most organizations probably could do a little bit better, us included. But I think one, kind of principle that I go by is, insights can come from anywhere. We don't need to be precious or territorial that they have to come from the insights team, right? And I think it's important to acknowledge that every single person in their life has a different lived experience, and that can contribute to their perspective on our categories and other things, as well as the fact that everybody in whatever function they're in, right, supply chain, finance, R&D, marketing, everyone has a different perspective or a bit of exposure to the consumer journey and what's happening there. So I think that's actually where the power is, to acknowledge that, everyone has something to share. And with that in mind, obviously making sure that we're keeping people grounded in the insight, but also not being prescriptive about what that means. So creatives or marketing, obviously you want to make sure people are embedded and understand the insight, but then, give people the leeway or the freedom to go run with that, right? And create the creative idea, the big idea, like we just saw with the superpower ad. R&D also, like, extraordinarily helpful for them, obviously, to ground themselves in the human insight, but also then to be able to understand how people are more than what we see in our categories. What I mean by that, if R&D sees somebody as more than just a pet owner, that's really helpful. If they just see somebody as somebody who hand washes their dishes, that gives you only a very limited view into what they are, right? So I think that that's how I kind of think about the collaborative piece, that it's a matter of sharing and obviously empowering to act on it based on expertise.
Yeah, that's huge. And what I would say is, if we've learned anything today, the pace of innovation is accelerating faster now than it has ever before. How is Colgate staying agile and responsive to evolving consumer needs and preferences and marketing trends? And when it comes to developing big ideas, how are they staying on top of it?
I think a few things. Obviously, I think it can be quite intimidating, actually, think about the pace of change. But two examples, actually. One is having the right processes in place to have the right people in the room. Sometimes you don't know it till the situation comes, and then you have to create it, but then you're set up for the next time. So I don't know if anyone remembers, but at the Met Gala last year, 2023, instead of the red carpet, they had a white carpet, and it had red and blue stripes. And all of a sudden, the buzz was, oh my gosh, are people walking the toothpaste instead of walking the carpet, right? Or is Colgate sponsoring this, which we weren't. But I think that was the exact situation where we actually had a process in place, a cross-functional team. We had the right people in the room, right? Whether that be legal, communications, whoever it was. And we were able to kind of hop on that trend and get some communication out there on social pretty quickly, right? Within 2 or 3 hours, which, believe it or not, for a company the size of Colgate, is kind of lightning speed. So, I think having those processes is one good thing. And the other piece, thinking, a little bit bigger picture, we have a benefit of global scale. So from a product development and innovation perspective, we can kind of keep an eye on how different trends evolve from market to market, how ingredients move across the world. So, I think those are two things that, we can do to lean into to keep up with the pace.
That's great. With that, I have no idea where we are on time, 5 minutes. So we'll open it up to questions. Any questions out there?
Yeah, how much are you willing to take risk on newer marketing, newer brands? Does that make sense? Sorry, I'm not translating.
If I think I hear what you're saying, maybe like newer marketing tactics or take things test on them. Yes. So I think this is funny. It's like you were planted in the round table I just came from. We had a bit of this discussion. I think, risk for a very large and 218-year-old company is always a little bit of a challenging place. But, I think where we think about it is in terms of brands. And there are certain brands where we're more willing to take a risk, like the Hello brand, right? Fabuloso, Ajax, some of those brands that can be a little more nimble and, have a little bit more leeway to do that, certainly. And then a brand like the Colgate parent brand, a little bit less so, right? I mean, you can understand that that's kind of the flagship, and there are a lot of things resting on that. Not to say we don't test and learn, but it's done more deliberately, I guess I would say, in terms of how we think about the risk and the fact that, again, that's a global equity, 200 whatever countries. So you also have to think about that, the impact to the global business and not just the local.
Yeah, which is the benefit of a portfolio, is that you can explore with the smaller and learn how it works, and then decide to let that run with the flagship. Any other questions? Great. How about a round of applause? Thanks so much. Fantastic session.